Hello guys, a very warm welcome to my IT class. We are going through a series of C++ tutorials. So in today's session, we'll be discussing classes and objects. So in the last video, we concluded C++ functions. Now we'll start classes and objects. Classes and objects, it is one of the backbone concept of object-oriented programming. Why it is a backbone? Rest of all the concepts available in the language are based on class and objects. Like if you talk about C++, the concept of inheritance is based on class and objects, polymorphism based on class and objects, operator overloading that is based on class and objects. So for every concept almost you need the concept of classes and objects. That's why a thorough understanding of class and object concept is very important in order to master rest of the concepts. So that's why let's discuss these things in detail. What's a class? What's an object? In general, what's a class? In the context of object-oriented programming, we can define a class as a collection or a group of objects which exhibit similar characteristics. Whereas what is an object? Again, in the context of object-oriented programming, we can say it is an entity or a thing. Because why I'm talking about context? When we talk about programming context, when we talk about language concept, the definitions would little bit change, but the ultimate meaning will remain same. So let's now discuss class and object in general sense. So in general sense, say for example, a collection of books. So book is one class. A set of books, a collection of books, a bunch of books will form a class. A bunch of birds form a class. A set of accounts form a account class. So this is where these are the classes. Anything which represents a group of similar objects could be called as a class. Now what the class has? The class has, like the class book has title, author, edition. The class birds has beak color, altitude, feather color, and similar way the class account has account number, balance, name. These we call as attributes of a class. These are attributes of a class. We call them attributes. What are the attributes? Say for example, you take now student. Student has attributes like student name, roll number, marks, university seat number. Such things are called attributes, or you can say these are columns of a particular class. So these attributes will give you states to objects. So now the title, what is the title here? The title for some book is say C++. Say this is a title and this is a C++, and this is a attribute, and my IT class is a author. Say edition, a first edition. Similar way, feather color green. This green is a state. Feather color is an attribute of class bird. Altitude, what altitude it flies? So the bird flies 100 meters. What is the name? What is the beak color of that bird? It is a red. So these are what? These are states of an object. So the attributes of a class will give you states. So this understanding is required when we define a class and create an object. So now we got to know that a class has attributes and an object has states. What are the states? The states correspond to attributes. If there is an attribute, there exists a state. If there is no attribute, there doesn't exist a state for the object. Similar way, now we can control the behavior of these objects. Say these are the states of objects. Now this is one object, I'll call it as This is one object. Say C++ my IT class, say it is one object, I call it as B1. Similar way, this is a bird, say it is a bird1, I call it as a BD1. And this is an account, so I call it as A1. So these are what? These are objects. So objects have states. These are states. Then these are attributes of a class. The class has attributes, objects have states. Okay, what these are then? Set title, init author, get edition. You will be using these functions to change the states. Say now I'll call set title on B1 and I'll change the title to say Java. I have changed now. The title of this object is changed. Similarly, I'll change the author. Set altitude. Right now the bird has an altitude BD1. BD1 is a bird. This is an object. So this bird, you can say this BD1 is more appropriately, if you want to call it as, say it is a parrot. Parrot has a body color, feather color green, beak color red. So it is a parrot now. Parrot, it fly to an altitude of 100 meters. Say I want to change the altitude. Set altitude, change altitude. I'll make it 1000 meters. So it will start flying at an altitude of 1000 meters. So you change the altitude. Now similar way, get balance. So you have a balance of 5000. If you want, you can have a change balance, set balance. Through that you can change the states. So what I mean to say here, with the help of these methods, we call actually these as methods in the context of object-oriented programming. In object-oriented programming, we call them as methods. But actually they are in C++ language, we call them as functions, member functions we can call. So these are methods, and in C++ you can call them as member functions. That I'll discuss in next slide in detail. So these are methods. Now I'll just summarize here. A class, this is a class. So the class has a name like bird, book, account. It has a unique name we call. A class has a unique name. And then what it has? It has a set of attributes. Say the class account has balance, name, account number, a set of attributes, and a set of methods. A set of methods or functions you can call. They are one and same. And now similarly, what an object has, because of the name, what is this parrot? What is this parrot? You say it is a bird. What is this book? What is this? If I say this is a book, you say. So these objects are getting identity from the class name. So the objects have identity. They derive it from the class name, and they have states. The states, from where they are coming? Because of the attribute, the object will get a state. For instance, there is an attribute like beak color. That's why there is a state like red. So the parrot has a beak color as a red, this way. Then methods. These methods, say now you change the title now. You change the title to Java and you change the altitude to 1000 meters. Now because of this, the object has changed its behavior. So to control behavior, we control behavior of an object through methods. Control behavior. This is how the correlation is there. This you must understand in order to define a class and establish communication among objects. So unique name, attribute, methods, this is for class. Because of the class name, the object will get an identity. Because of attributes of a class, the object will get states. And because through methods of a class, we can control the behavior as per our requirement. Now this bird is there. This bird, you can make it fly up to 1000 meters, or even you can make it up to fly up to 10 meters also. You can vary, you can control the behavior by changing the altitude. So how you are changing the altitude? You are changing it through a method, through a function. That's how it is there. So this is the basic general discussion about classes and objects. Now let us discuss in the context of programming. In programming context, what class and objects are. So what is a class? A class is a template or a blueprint kind of thing using which you will create objects of desired behavior. You have seen now just now in the previous slide that how we can get the desired behavior by defining a member function. We change the state of an object. By changing states, we can change the behavior as per our requirement. And then what where, or you can say it's a place to describe what kind of object is required or desired. That is what ADT, abstract data type. So class allows you to define user defined data type, or it's an abstract data type. So you will be only listing what is required. The other things you are not, the things which are in which you are not interested, you will just ignore them and you will focus on only what is required. That is what abstract data type. An object, now we'll define an object. What is an object? It is a variable of this class type. So when you declare, say you are familiar how to create variables, say int x. Now x is a variable of integer, but integer is a primitive type. That's why x cannot be called as an object. If it were like this, account A1. Now when I say account A1, now account, you have defined it as a class, you have defined it as an ADT. Now what you will be doing, you are creating a variable of this class A1. This A1 is object actually because it is a variable. So variable of this class type is an object. So what is the type of A1? This is a class type. Account is a class type. So that's how in programming context we define class and object. You can treat an object as a variable of class type. Let's define a class. How we can define, what is the syntax? We'll check. So the C++ syntax for it will be class is a keyword here, and class name, the relevant name you are supposed to give. Now like account, student, employee, item, customer. This way the class names will appear here. And what these classes have attributes, those attributes will come as data members. The attributes what we have listed over there, for some examples, same way every class has attributes. Those attributes will come as a data members, and the methods which you discussed in the previous slide, they will come as member functions, methods of a class. Why you want method? You need method to control behavior of an object. Say these are methods. This is how we define class and object in programming context. Now let's see one example how we can do it. I'll define now, we'll take one example. Say define a class called circle. Define a class called circle with data as radius. And what he is saying, create one circle and compute its area. So this is how it is there. We are now having a object oriented approach. We will not have a function oriented approach. So if it were a function oriented approach, we have defined a main, cout, enter radius, float a is equal to 3.1. This is a function oriented approach, procedure oriented. But now we are taking a journey of object oriented. Everything we have to do it in terms of object. So we need to represent a circle as an object. So we need to represent a circle as an object. To represent it as an object, I must define a class circle, class circle. But what should be the data type? What should be the data member? The class circle has a, there is a class. Say if you take here this circle, you draw a circle here. This circle has some data. What is that? You are getting different shapes. Why you are getting different shapes? Because of there is a change in radius. So it is the radius which will decide the size of your circle. So that's why the attribute will be what here now? It is the radius. Say float radius. Float radius. Now you will get an idea. Say this is what I have here. So when you define a class, you are not only checking, you are not only listing the data, you will be also deciding the visibility. You will also be deciding the visibility. What is this visibility? Or you can say it is a access modifiers or access labels. We will call it as access modifiers. So here in C++ we find 3 access modifiers. Protected, private we'll take first, private, protected, then public. So these 3 things, visibility accesses, are provided for what purpose? They are provided in order to implement data encapsulation. They are provided for implementing data encapsulation. You have seen that what is data encapsulation? It is binding of data and methods together in order to protect the data, to secure the data. So now I'll go in detail what is private, protected, public later on. Now right now I'll only focus on private and public. So anything private, it is local to the class. Anything public, that can be accessed from outside the class. So now this is the boundary. This is the boundary of your class. This is the boundary of your class. So if it is a private, only accessible within this, radius is accessible within this. If it is a public, it can be accessed outside this boundary also. So now I want to use it as a public. Why I am using public, I'll discuss that thing with you. Let me just now take it as a public and write a program for it. Say public, I'll make it accessible outside the class also. Float, say R, I'll be taking radius. Now I'll be defining main also. So the main will look like this. Main, it is used to create a object of class circle. Circle C1, one object I am creating. Now through this object, say this is a circle C1. Now this is one object here. Say this is a C1. What is its radius? Say it is 2.5. That I'll initialize here. So C1 dot radius is 2.5. So that's what here I want to stress. See, you are able to access this R. This R you are able to access. This R is of this class. You are able to access here outside the class. It is because of public. You are accessing it. Now you can compute area also here. Area float A is equal to 3.142 into C1's radius. C1's area we are calculating. So C1 dot R, you have to say C1 dot R. Then you will get area. Then you will display it. Say cout area. So this is how you did one program, simple program of C++, where you defined one class with public data and you created a main function to create the object. So this is what we say object. C1 is object. C1 is an object, and with this object I'll access the state of the class circle C1.R and then compute area. So this is somewhat violating the very basic purpose of data encapsulation, because you have taken here public. So if it is made private, now what will happen? Say if I make it private, then what will happen here? Say if it is a private, then here you will not be able to access it. You cannot access in this location. You cannot access in this location. You will get 3 errors. R is a private data of class circle, cannot be accessed outside the class, this way. So then what you are supposed to do, that I will demonstrate in my next video. How to access private data of a class. For that we need to define the public interface, methods in functions in public section. How we do it, how we achieve it, that all I'll discuss in my next video. Till then, take care. I hope you enjoyed the session. If you really enjoyed, please share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.